Hey, it's Dr. Darnise here. Welcome on in. And did you know that every religion starts off as a cult? Every religion starts off as a cult. We're going today to talk about the difference between a cult, a sect, and a church. So, wearing my religion scholar hat today, we're going to dive into each of these terms. Now, in our society, we tend to use these words in a particular kind of a way. We think we know what we're talking about. We tend to think that we have a shared vocabulary and meaning system, but in actuality, these terms have a very particular meaning. And so sometimes we just interchange them on, we don't know what we're talking about. Okay, so yeah, I said something that might have gotten your attention first off, that every religion starts off as a cult, but I thought a cult was one of those crazy religions where people drink the Kool-Aid, or people give all of their money, or, go off and live in a commune or something and are never seen or heard from again. Or maybe a cult are those people who unalived themselves and got on that ship and left here. That is one that happened, right? You remember that one? They were based in San Diego. I'm not thinking of the name, Hale-Bopp or something like that. But no. Okay, what does cult really mean? Cult really means new religion. Cult really means new religion. And these are sociological terms. So people who do sociology of religion give us these definitions, at least working definitions, and ways of thinking about our religious practices. So a cult is really just a new religion. So at some point, every religion is new. Okay, so when a religion is new, there's already an environment into which it is born, into which it emerges, and the people who are witnessing the emergence or the birth of this new religion look at it suspiciously. Here are some traits of a cult. It's new, has a high degree of social tension, people are unfamiliar with it, people are suspicious of it. So that's what I mean by a high degree of social tension. Because we don't know much about it, we tend to be suspicious about it, and we tend to diminish the legitimacy of that group, of those people. A cult, because it is new, also means that it is not, or seemingly not, connected to anything familiar, right? So is there a parent religion, or is there something that we can say, oh, you're kind of like this, so I know what you are? No, something is really a cult. It means that it is sort of freestanding and nobody knows what it is. So high degree of social tension. And it means that those people are often persecuted, um, driven out of town, persecuted at all levels, right? So, for example, Christianity, a cult. Now, one could say that it was initially thought of as a sect. A sect meaning a section of or something similar to another religious body, right? Like the word section, right? It is a sect, S-E-C-T, S-E-C-T, a sect, right? We could say that Christianity is a sect of Judaism, or at least at its beginning, Christianity was perceived to be a sect of Judaism because these were Jewish people, right? Obviously, Jesus was Jewish. He was talking to Jewish people. They were talking about the Jewish law, Jewish community. And so these people who were Jesus followers, followers of the way, they tended to think of themselves as Jews, right? With a new message, with a new Messiah, right? But the tradition of Judaism that was already established looked at those people over there and said, no, he was not the Messiah. You are mistaken. And anyway, we just saw him get crucified and taken out of here. So clearly he was not the Messiah. That's not what would happen to God's chosen man, right? That's not what would happen. That's not who we've been waiting for. So if you're going to say that Jesus was the Messiah, then you're not who we are. You're not one of us. And at the point where that group, right, Judaism, they already had a degree of legitimacy already. If they say, you're not really one of us, you're not like us, then that group is pushed out on their own. They are a cult status now because now they are just a brand new thing. And the larger society, so if you think back in terms of that context, that historical, social, and cultural context in which Christianity emerges, it emerges under Roman imperialism. And so the Romans then said, oh, okay, well, then you are a insignificant, illegitimate group, right? So when I say Christianity began as a cult, I mean that it began really as a new religion and it did not have, after a period of time, a home base. It did not have another religion to connect to it where that legitimacy could rub off or help them in terms of their influence and their standing in a society. Some people don't have to let that sit for a minute. I know. Because Christians are used to thinking of their religion as being the one right religion and being, always the right religion. But that is not the beginning of Christian history. We know Christians were persecuted, right? We know the Romans threw the Christians to the lions, and there's all kind of persecutions that happened early on, right? The Jesus people, after he was crucified, resurrected, after all of that, they were on the run, right? Paul himself on the run. Okay, so what is it that made Christianity become a legitimate religion? Some shift happened, right? Some shift had to happen because this little group of Jesus followers really would have just died out because there were so few of them. And Jewish people were saying, you're not like us. You know that Kendrick song, not like us, right? You can find in the New Testament too. If you're reading the New Testament, especially in the Gospel of John, you can find all of this language where, the Jesus followers are saying, we got thrown out of the synagogue, or, they're referring to the Jews this, the Jews this. They won't let us come into the synagogue anymore. They were referring to those who were the establishment, the established Jewish people, as Jewish Christians, we might say now, they expected to fully continue, their lives as Jews with this new vision. But that's not what happened. So in the New Testament, you can find this friction, right, between the new Jesus followers and the old established Jews. Right. So now I mentioned this term sect, right? SECT. A religion that is connected to another one, right? So, for example, all Black Christian denominations are sectarian. What does that mean? It means to say that if you have a Baptist church, you have a Methodist church, you have a Pentecostal church, well, not so much Pentecostals, but the Baptists, the Methodists, the Lutherans, the Presbyterians, the mainline Protestant religions, just the fact that we had segregation and enslavement in this country means that Black and white people didn't worship together. So we at various points had a Black, an African American version of that church develop, right? African American Methodist, Black Baptist. It's not a brand new religion. It's connected to something that's already known. So by the time you get a Black Baptist church, a African Methodist Episcopal Zion, Colored Methodist Episcopal, right? By the time you get these Black holiness churches, the larger society, white society, the larger United Methodist Church, they're not like, oh, I wonder what that is. They seem suspicious. No, they know what that is. That is the Black church over there, because as we know, religious practice has nearly always been segregated in these United States because America, okay? So the sectarian, to say something is a sect means it has a relationship with another larger, more established body, right? Now here's, could be a tricky kind of a question. Let's see how you're doing. Something like the Nation of Islam. Is it a sect or a cult? Something like the Mormons. Are they a sect or are they a cult? The Nation of Islam says we're Muslim. We're not a brand new thing. We're Muslim. But the Muslims, the Sunni, the Shia, the Middle Eastern Muslims, they're like, because you're talking about Allah has a message to the black man in America. That's very specific. So those of us who have been practicing Islam since Muhammad was walking around, what? There was no United States of America. So how are you talking about Allah showed up to help the black man in America? So to traditional Sunni and Shia Muslims that we are so associate with the Middle East, North Africa, they're going to look over here at the Nation of Islam and say, Malcolm X, Elijah Muhammad, Louis Farrakhan, not really. So does that then make the Nation of Islam a cult? Well, probably. But if you talk to members of the nation, they consider themselves to be a sect because they understand that they are associated with Islam. So what's the final answer, as my students would say? Maybe there is no final answer. Depends on who you're asking. Now, I threw in there Mormons. Mormon. Are they a cult, a new religion? Or are they a sect? Just another branch of Christianity. Now, I know in the comments you might have plenty to say. um, but really, they're not a new thing. They're not a brand new thing. They're considered a new religion because they are, they only got their start in what, 1820s. Joseph Smith was their prophet and their founder. Now, you might not agree with what they teach, but really they just have a newer testament. There's a New Testament, and here comes Joseph Smith, the prophet, with a newer testament called the Book of Mormon. And people can say, oh, but they believe in this. Oh, but they believe in that. Oh, but it doesn't matter, really. Because think again about, especially if you're a Christian, right? And you're used to thinking about what your religion teaches as being real and true and sounding normal. But think of how radical it would have sounded that this man, Jesus, got up and was crucified in front of everybody, and then got up and walked around again. That don't sound reasonable at all. There's actually no proof of the resurrection. Oh, I know some people want to quote scripture. That's not proof. That's not historical proof. That's a faith commitment. No, it's a faith commitment. That's fine. But there's no historical proof. How could history prove that? So when we talk about somebody like the Mormons and they say, okay, well, God still has a message. Here's another prophet by the name of Joseph Smith. Here's another book that helps us understand God better. And it is for us in the United States, because the Mormons are here in the United States. It's an American religion. So who's to say? How can you look at the Mormons and say, no, you're not Christian? The name of their church is the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints. The Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints, and they position Jesus to be right here in these United States. Again, it might be something that you don't believe in yourself, but it doesn't mean that it is automatically illegitimate. And from their point of view, they certainly are Christians. From their own point of view, and of course they're Christian. They worship Jesus. So that was just a little quiz for you. Now I said, we covered cult, we covered sect. Now here we are at church. So then what's a church? A church is the established religious body, right? The church, right? I mentioned the United Methodist Church, right? Or the Baptist Church, or the Catholic Church, or something like Islam itself, right? Or Judaism. Those are representing an established religious order. There's very low social tension. Remember, it was called high social tension because it's so brand new, nobody knows what it is, and people are highly suspicious. With something like the church, it is, again, whether or not you believe in what they teach, we are familiar with it, and we sort of grant it a certain amount of status and legitimacy in a society. It has power. It is a recognized institution. So it's legitimate in that way. And it kind of sets the standard for who's a sect and who's a cult. Because if you're not really like me, then I can say, no, you're a foreign body, which means you're new and you're on your own. Or I can say, okay, I recognize that you are another Methodist baby that I had. You're another Baptist baby that I had. And you're okay. Maybe we don't talk like that so much anymore, but you're okay. And so that would be a church, the legitimate religious body, right? We know in our culture, for example, the church has certain rights. It has certain economic status. They don't have to pay taxes like other institutions. Clergy often have a position of status and power. Again, whether or not you agree with it, but we have to we have to recognize that it's true, right? There's a certain respect that people tend to have for clergy in general. So that is your rundown of the differences between church, sect, and cult. So I'm really curious what you have to put in the comments about that, and let me have your questions. And if there's a significant number of questions, maybe I'm going to do a part two kind of a video to answer some more of your questions. But other than that, you can look in the description box, and I have a link there to my African American Studies course there, and some of the online segments of that course talk exactly about this church, sect, and cult. So that's the kind of thing that is included in that online course. So again, the link is in the description box. It is called African American Studies course. That's what it's called. Check it out. Bye for now.